If you enjoy our content and think this is important material, the best compliment you can pay is by sharing this with your friends and family. This helps us out a lot. Also, if you enjoyed today's program, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to this podcast. We would love to hear from you. Welcome to the Truth in My Days podcast, where we defend the Word of God against the challenges of men.
Hello, today we have Sonia interviewing John about textual criticism. This is the field of study through which we can know the original text of the New Testament. We are continuing from the previous episode today.
Well, those are some serious errors. Are there any others?
Quite a number of different sorts as well. There's, for example, geographic errors or supposed geographic errors. You know the story where Jesus heals the demoniac, casts out a legion of demons. In Mark chapter 5, verse 1, we read this. Then they came to the other side of the sea, to the country of the Gadarenes. That's what you'll see in the majority text. That's what in most of the manuscripts. You'll see that in New King James Version. But what you will see in the critical text, and therefore in the NIV, NASB, ESV, and so on, you'll see Gerasenes. He came to the country of the Gerasenes. Now, Gadarenes is in 95.1% of the manuscripts, Gerasenes in only 4.1%. It's not actually in Sinaiticus and Vaticanus. Those side with the majority text reading. In Luke 8:26, which is talking about the same event, they will read that they sailed to the country of the Gadarenes, which is opposite Galilee. Then the whole multitude of the surrounding region of the Gadarenes asked him to depart from them. So it's Gadarenes. But what you see in the critical text is Gerasenes.
Is that a big deal?
Well, it's a big deal because you remember what happens in the incident. This is where Jesus casts out a legion of demons, and they ask to be sent into the herd of swine. Huge herd of swine there. And he sends the demons into the swine, and we're told that the swine stampedes, runs down a steep place into the sea and drowns in the sea. And here's the problem. The city of Gadara is 6 miles from the Sea of Galilee, but that's the city. The region of the Gadarenes includes the surrounding territory, and it does extend all the way to the Sea of Galilee, shown by the fact that there are many of these Gadarene coins showing ships on it. Gerasa, on the other hand, for the Gerasenes, it's 35 miles away from the Sea of Galilee. There's no place, no way the herd of swine could have run down the steep place into the sea and drowned in the sea. It couldn't be. So not only is this an error, but this is something that skeptics would point to say, see, Mark could not possibly have been based on eyewitness testimony, because an eyewitness would be familiar with the local geography. He would know that it's not possible for a herd of swine to run from the land of the Gerasenes into the sea. So here again, by accepting this minority reading, by going along with the liberal presumptions of mainstream textual criticism, we are giving ammunition to the skeptics to show not just an error in the text, but to show that, see, it's not reliable. It can't be based on eyewitness testimony.
Well, there does seem to be a double standard, though. You said that Sinaiticus and Vaticanus actually agreed with the majority text here. So what's going to be their excuse for not going with the so-called oldest and best manuscripts this time?
Well, it's not the only place that happens. You remember when we looked at John chapter 7, that reading that makes Jesus look dishonest, where he says that I'm not yet going down to the feast with his brothers, but he goes afterward, whereas the minority reading has, I am not going down to the feast, but afterwards he goes down secretly. And we saw there that the not yet, the one that doesn't make Jesus look dishonest, is in Sinaiticus. It's in Vaticanus, and it's even in the Papyrus P66. So when those three agree, it should always go into the critical text. But it seems like really the unspoken rule, the most important is the most difficult. Whatever puts an error into the text is the one we're going with, regardless of what's actually found in the manuscripts.
Are there other errors too?
Oh, yeah. As I said, different categories of error. There's one in Luke 23:45 in the category of scientific error. If you read, this is during the crucifixion of Jesus, and you remember that the sun became dark. The sun was darkened, and there was darkness on the land for 3 hours. Well, that's what we see in the majority text. That's what we see in most of the manuscripts. The sun was darkened. Now, the Greek word there is skotizo. But in the critical text, we read then the sun being eclipsed. And the Greek word there is eklepo. Is this a big issue? Well, yes. Jesus was crucified at the time of the Passover, and that occurs during a full moon. And it's not possible to have a solar eclipse at the time of the full moon. The moon is on the wrong side of the earth at that time.
Okay, but when the sun is darkened, I mean, I assume that was a supernatural intervention or something, because normally the sun doesn't just get dark by itself, does it?
Well, it could naturally if you had a solar eclipse, but you couldn't have had a solar eclipse at that point. So yes, it was supernatural darkening.
Well, why couldn't it be a supernatural eclipse when it may otherwise be impossible, but couldn't God make it happen?
Well, he could. I suppose he could pick up the moon and transfer it to the other side of the planet for a few hours and then move it back. Yes, theoretically that's possible, but unless we think that's what happened, and since the overwhelming majority of the manuscripts say skotizo instead of eklepo, there's no reason to go with that one.
Well, those words are so different looking that it doesn't seem like it could just have been omission or some kind of spelling error. What do you think happened there? How do you end up with a completely different word that doesn't even have any similarities in structure?
Well, there's more than one possibility. One possibility is that this was one that was copied from a lector, somebody reading out at the front of the room so they can have multiple scribes working at once, and he just misheard the word or wasn't paying attention. Another possibility would be that the manuscript he was working on had a tear or a smudge at that point, that word was obscure to the point where he couldn't read it clearly.
And just had to take a guess, perhaps.
And he made his best guess at it. Either way, like any time you have a variant, you always have to explain where the secondary reading came from. So if we're going to say, well, he wouldn't change skotizo to eklepo, we'd also have to ask, well, why would he change eklepo to skotizo? And again, always the secondary reading is the one that's going to be in the minority of manuscripts, especially if it's a small minority. In this case, the reading adopted by the critical text is found in only 6 Greek manuscripts, only 6. And it introduces, as it is, a scientific error into the Bible. Now, they will say, the ones who try to defend it will say, well, it's not really a scientific error, you see, because eklepo can mean something else.
Can it?
Like stopped shining. That's what the NIV has it. NASB says was obscured. ESV has the sun's light failed. And it can mean something like to fail or come to an end. But in the literature, whenever it's used of the sun or the moon, it always refers to an eclipse. Always. So we can't do what we call definition shopping, that we look at the entire semantic range of the word here and pick the one we want. We have to look at how is it actually used in Greek literature. And when it comes to in reference to sun or moon, it always does refer to an eclipse. So if we put that reading in as the original, once again, the skeptics will say it's a scientific error and that the writer cannot have had eyewitness information to hand. How could he have had eyewitness information? An eyewitness wouldn't talk about a solar eclipse at the time of the full moon. It's actually an egregious error. And then they would say, well, why should anyone believe the Bible on big scientific issues such as creation and evolution if it can't even get a minor scientific matter like this correct?
Oh, that is a problem. You also just now mentioned a passage where Jesus was made to look like a liar. Can you go into more detail about that?
Yes, this is in John chapter 7, verse 8. And Jesus Jesus' brothers are urging him. They're not believers. We're told that they're not believers. And it's feast time. And they're urging him to go up to the feast to Jerusalem, kind of mocking him almost, because they know that there's essentially a hit order out on him from the Pharisees already. Jesus' brothers said to him, "Leave Galilee and go to Judea, so that your disciples there may see the works you do." Therefore, Jesus told them, now listen to the response. "You go to the festival. I am not going up to this festival, because my time has not yet fully come." After he had said this, he stayed in Galilee. However, after his brothers had left for the festival, he went also, not publicly, but in secret. Does that make it sound like he was being deceptive at minimum to his brothers, saying, "I'm not going up to this festival," and then after they leave, he secretly sneaks up?
Yeah, that seems pretty deceptive, maybe an outright lie, unless he could somehow have said, okay, immediately after the brothers left, now his time has fully come.
Yeah, but he didn't say that to the brothers, so obviously what the brothers thought was going to happen is not what he was saying. So, you go to the festival, I am not going up to this festival. That's the way it's read in the NIV. In the NASB, we see this, "Go up to the feast yourselves. I do not go up to this feast, because my time has not yet fully come." Does that sound equally deceptive?
Yeah.
Yeah. The ESV reading, "You go up to the feast. I am not going up to this feast, for my time has not yet fully come."
Yeah.
Yeah, same thing. Now, what's the real story here? Is Jesus being deceptive? Well, the majority text, the one based on the majority of readings, Jesus says, "You go up to this feast. I am not yet going up to this feast, for my time has not yet fully come." So here he's not saying he's not going to go. He just says he's not going now with his brothers. Is that deceptive?
No.
No.
Wow, so one little word makes a difference. I guess that was probably an accidental omission.
Oh, it's a different word, actually. It's u versus hupo, or upo. But yeah, it'd be an omission of letters. But and he goes to the feast, and as you say, by changing from not yet to not, Jesus in the critical text is made to be dishonest or an actual liar. And yet that not is present in only 9 Greek manuscripts. We have probably about 1,500 manuscripts of John. It's missing in 9 manuscripts. And what was particularly interesting is the not yet that we see in the majority text is there, as we said, in P66, in P75, and in Codex Vaticanus. Those 3, when those 3 line up, that's always supposed to be accepted. And what do we do with this? Well, interestingly, Metzger will say, the reading not yet was introduced at an early date. It is attested in P66, P75, in order to alleviate the inconsistency between verse 8 and verse 10.
So he's basically saying it was added on purpose so that Jesus doesn't look like a liar.
Yeah, to alleviate the inconsistency. Well, isn't that a cute choice of words? What it means is to make it look like Jesus isn't lying. And the chutzpah, he says it's introduced at an early date because it's in the earliest material. But the earliest material is what's supposed to tell us, according to their theory, that's the one we're supposed to go with. If it's in P66, P75, and Codex Vaticanus, why should we not consider it the earliest?
Well, I guess like you said, the overwhelming unspoken canon is the reading that introduces errors into the Bible is the one to be preferred.
Yeah, exactly. To say, well, it was introduced at an early date, well, you have no evidence of it being not. There's no evidence anywhere in any writing, any manuscript, that reading existed before the not yet one. So, as you say, this is pretty much smoking gun evidence that the goal, whether it's done wittingly or unwittingly, is to introduce errors into the text. And when necessary, they will even ignore their earliest and best material.
Thank you, everyone, for listening today. Unfortunately, we have run out of time, but please join us for the next part, same time and same place. Thank you for listening to the Truth in My Days podcast with John Torse. We would love to hear from you. Please feel free to share any questions or comments you may have. You can reach us on Facebook, Instagram, MeWe, and YouTube. Simply search Truth in My Days as one word. Again, Truth in My Days as one word, no spaces in between. And you can connect with us. You may also visit our website for more comprehensive material and to learn more about our ministry. Our website is truthinmydays.com. Thank you.